Hi, welcome to Real Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager.
And I'm Brian Michael. As always, we are taping live from home due to the quarantine. We have a very interesting show for you today. We have an action blockbuster. We have a small drama, as well as an independent film, and a classic, I should say, foreign film, and another classic foreign film because, well, it wouldn't be Real Film Snobs if we didn't do at least two. The clip you saw at the top of the show is for The Old Guard. This is a brand new film. It's available on Netflix. Surprise, surprise, it's streaming because that's all we're doing right now. This stars Charlize Theron as a member of a covert team of immortal mercenaries who are suddenly exposed and must now fight to keep their identity a secret as an unexpected new member is discovered. This is directed by Gina Prince-Bythewood, I believe is how you pronounce her name, who also directed Love and Basketball from 2000 and The Secret Life of Bees from 2008. And if you wonder why it's such a long gap, did I mention she's female and a person of color? So usually that takes a little while for them to be able to make films, sadly. But like I said, this does star Charlize Theron, so that's the big draw for me. It's an action film. I really enjoyed her film that she was in, was Atomic Blonde. It had fantastic action sequences, and she certainly did step up and, as an action star. And this one does have some really over choreographed action sequences, I would say. At first it was kind of cool, then after a while it was kind of like, wow, these are really staged here. I did enjoy the film. It's based on a comic book, Angela.
I know.
If you knew that. It is.
Graphic novel is actually what they said at the end, but yes.
Yeah, it's a graphic novel. But I really enjoyed this story because these people who had lived forever had fought in several different wars and trying to make the difference in the world, and were just kind of distraught as mankind, in their opinion, hadn't gone any further, or hadn't advanced any further. And that's where the problem with me in this film is. I like this movie. It's a 3-star film, but when you've got Charlize Theron, not that she's above action because she does action very well, but you also have this extra meat in her character in terms of the past that I so could explore. Now, we probably will because it is set up for a sequel. It is Netflix. They threw $70 million or so million dollars at this film to be made. But you could really add the extra heft of that weight on her. Now, no offense to someone like Keanu Reeves, who's great in John Wick, as John Wick. But with Charlize Theron, you could heap on a whole lot more in terms of emotional value and emotional weight to this role, and she easily could carry that. And so here we, as I like to say, here we have a thoroughbred trotting, and it's a little frustrating, but I mean, it's a nice distraction. It's a fun film and one I enjoyed, and there are probably more installments that I want to watch, but I really wanted them to get a little further into in depth of her character and what they expected from mankind.
Yeah, I can't quite go there. I didn't hate the movie, but I'm going to give it 2.5. I really wanted more from it, like you said, especially considering the caliber of the cast. Charlize Theron, of course, we know she can do a lot more. I really, it took me actually about 20-30 minutes in it. I kept looking at the young woman who plays the character of Niall, who's the new member of the group, and going, God, she looks familiar, but I couldn't quite place her. And then I looked her up and I'm like, oh, she was the star of If Beale Street Could Talk, Kiki Lane, and she was just amazing in that.
You liked that movie, if I remember right. It was in your top 10 of the decade?
Yes. And she was amazing in that film and isn't given a whole lot to do here. And I kind of felt like that for a lot of the actors. Matthias Schoenaerts, another actor I love, he's a Belgian-French actor. He's one of the immortals, and he is just kind of there. And Chiwetel Ejiofor, who I love, is in there as the sort of sympathetic bad guy of sorts. And he also not given much to do. So I just wanted a little, especially since it's over 2 hours, it's 2 hours and 15 minutes. I thought they could have explored these characters more. Even the idea of the immortals, like they just sort of like, oh, we're immortal, we don't know why. And so I thought, well, you've
Was
you've
it
been
really
around.
that long? Was it over 2 hours?
Yeah, it was 2 hours and 15 minutes. And
Whoops.
I thought, with that much time, you have some time to maybe explore some of these issues. And I hate that when a movie just sets it up for like, well, we're going to get to the interesting stuff in the next movie. It's like, no, come on, give me something here. And I didn't think the action sequences looked that good. They're over choreographed and they don't look particularly that interesting to look at as an action movie.
Or
Um,
realistic in any way.
yeah, and you could do that, I suppose, if you're going for something like I hate to almost praise the Harley Quinn DC movie, but if you want to go for something comic book looking, that's,
Oh.
or a significant look, but I think they were trying to maybe go for something that looked semi-realistic. In particular, because these folks are not superheroes in that, I mean, they don't have any special powers other than being immortal, which is a pretty big one, but, they're not like super strong. They can't, lasers coming out of their eyes or anything. So you want just some good staged action sequences.
So, over $70 million, couldn't you have just set aside, let's say, $500,000 and just videotape them eating lunch? I mean, not to sound like Gene Siskel, but I would rather lunch, them eating and sitting and talking about acting would have been far more fascinating to me, because here it is. And I left the heavy lifting to you because I knew you could pronounce all their names. Some amazing actors. Or, $5 million, and let's just do a stage play of whatever one they wanted to choose, because between all of them, I'm sure they could pick one and they do an amazing job. I mean, here are some fantastic actors. I mean, we just talked about the Mustang earlier this year, and of course, Bone, which I talk about at least once every 5 years or 5 episodes, it seems. Yeah, it's just kind of yeah, it's just not necessarily a waste, because it was great to see them up on the screen. I'm glad they're getting work. Hopefully, they get a big paycheck for it. But yeah, maybe the next movie, then I'll be able to get a little further in depth into one of those. I never thought about that, why they're immortal. I'm just, I just totally accept that, because that's kind of how things work now in movies.
Well, I don't accept it. I want character development and arc, and I want something that makes sense. And even if they don't know why, you think they'd be a little bit more curious about it. I mean, even the new recruit, she's like, "Why?" And they're like, "We don't know." And she's like, "Oh, okay." And then they go on fighting. And I'm like, "That's it? That's your whole questions?" And especially considering Shirley Theron's character has been around since, they almost seem to imply maybe since the beginning of time. She might have some wisdom there. I don't know. She might know how to do something besides some cool kicks. So.
Yeah, well, even the newbie who is black, her all of a sudden dealing with this fact that she's now different from everybody. I thought, oh, here's a cool parable. Oh, we never went there. Oh, that's okay. Okay, well, all right, we'll move on.
Yeah.
So our next movie is her fresh picks. This is one that Angela has. Oops, did I get the skip movie? Nope, that's not her fresh picks. It's Shirley from Hulu. This is the movie actually released earlier this year in 2020. About a famous horror writer finds inspiration for her next book after she and her husband take in a young couple. What's great about this movie is it stars Elizabeth Moss. What's not so great about this movie is that it's pretty much, I've seen this movie 100 million times, and I'm pretty sure Meryl Streep starred in a couple of them, because what it is that here's a movie that's just kind of like a movie of the week. Here are these young, academics that are meeting these older academics, and they kind of get played like puppets from the older characters, and they get manipulated, and they kind of in some sort of pseudo-sexual perhaps game. I don't know, but there's always a standout performance. Elizabeth Moss is fantastic, as she is in everything that she does, and I absolutely love watching her on the screen, and I certainly will go out of my way to see anything that she's in. But much like Meryl Streep in the 80s, who everyone thinks she's this great actress, but when I put it to you and said, how many great films has she been in?
Couple.
So a good movie with a fantastic performance in it, which is what we have here. And I could watch Elizabeth Moss, open Christmas gifts, because I'm sure it would be fantastic the way she would do it. But she plays an artist, a troubled artist, who I knew nothing about until afterwards. I looked it up. So it was one of those movies I had to do homework, not in a good way. Why couldn't they have just had an exposition at the very beginning and said, hey, this is what she is, this is what she is, what she's done, this is why she's a big deal. Because at first I'm like, why are they putting up with her? She's being obnoxious, or maybe she's issues here. Why aren't we helping her? I don't know how to feel about it. I'm very confused. And of course, she's this great artist that we learn eventually. Then I had to look it up afterwards to find out, or I think I may even pause the movie and find out who the heck is this. Directed by Josephine Decker, who's someone I'm not familiar with, but Madeline is a movie that, did we
We
watch it?
watched
Or did I watch 2 seconds of it? And I
we
think
watched the whole movie, and you hated it.
I hated it, right? Okay. So so this movie had a lot going against it. Other than I can recommend it barely for Elizabeth Moss' performance because she's that damn good in it.
And you did not mention Michael Stolberg, who plays her husband, who's in been in a ton of films, including Call Me by Your Name, and I thought he was terrific as well as her husband. They had very interesting dynamic because they're both writers, right? And so they have this competitive thing. And I think I liked it maybe a little bit more than you. I'm giving it 3 stars, not an amazing movie, but I just felt like I felt like they were trying to go away from doing a standard biopic by adding in this young newlywed couple into the mix. But I just wanted to watch this couple. I just wanted to watch Shirley Jackson and her husband and get into their lives. And I don't really think we needed this fake story because that part is fictional, the young couple that comes to live with them. And other than maybe they were just trying to show what it must look like to outsiders, I don't know. But I felt like Shirley Jackson as a character and as a writer is interesting enough on her own. I mean, Stephen King said she's one of the greatest horror writers of all time. Like, why not just make a good movie about her? So
yeah. So I didn't understand, why don't they ever, the Chaplin was another movie. Why don't you make a movie about the person and their art? Or at least just, Frida was another one that, they showed her life and how that affected her art and how that came into being. That was way more fascinating. And of course, it's a great film. But yeah, this one I just was kind of like, I've seen this movie before where this young student comes in and this person's a jerk and blah, 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 blah. And
I thought the most interesting parts of the movies were when Shirley Jackson is kind of, alone with the other young woman, but she's kind of researching her next book and she's getting into, that's the artist part of it. She's kind of formulating the ideas. That stuff was the most interesting. But then they get into this whole thing of, oh, they're watching them through the peephole, and that stuff was a little tired.
Yeah, and then there's a little bit of, lesbianism in there, and I've just seen it so many times before, but I could watch Elizabeth Moss, honestly, read her mail. I think she's just that compelling and that interesting to me that I could recommend the film barely with 3 stars, but I really want someone to just, that was one thing that, Katharine Hepburn grabbed onto a great director, and I hope Elizabeth Moss finds one that she can find one that she can work with that really just takes her, that gives her just a story that's worthy of telling around her.
Yeah, I'd agree. Okay, so we'll move on to our next segment, which is her fresh picks, and these are critically acclaimed films from the current year that I put together, and I just find ones that we can watch that are available. And there are actually new movies still coming out almost exclusively on streaming right now, and this is one of them. It's called Premature, and it's about a young woman who experiences her first love during the course of the summer before she leaves for college. I was not familiar with the actors or the director. The director's Rashaad Ernesto Green. Not familiar with him, and I looked him up on IMDb, and I'm still not really familiar with him. I hadn't seen any of his work. He's done some TV and a few movies, but not a lot. I had so high hopes going into this movie because the reviews were really high. It's like 90-something% on Rotten Tomatoes, and it does have a nice look to it. So I would give it that. And I think the young actors are very promising and definitely very nice to look at. But sort of like what you said about the Shirley Jackson movie, I felt like that with this one. I'm like, oh, I've seen this before. First love, young couple, summer before you go off to school. I felt like I'd seen it before.
Really, I was really captivated by this film, other than her being a very intelligent character doing some kind of foolish things, but love makes you do that. This reminded me, well, it's oddly enough that we talked about it, Bill Street Could Talk, because this reminded me of that film, because how many times do we see a romantic movie, and here she is very realistically surrounded by a group of friends, and I thought that all of their chatter at whatever times they were talking felt very realistic. And then she meets this guy, and it felt very organic, and it felt very romantic, and I really enjoyed their relationship at the very start and growing into that. There's some gratuitous sex scenes that really just weren't necessary. And it was, nothing wrong with seeing something sexy, but it was like, no, 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 no. I was like, yeah, they have sex. Sure, sure. Can we just fade to black and let's get back to the conversation between the characters because I really enjoyed that about them. It's a
Mm.
beautiful film, and I thought it was a very romantic film, and I was really captivated and pulled into that. Even with the misstep or the character making a dumb, you know, decision or whatever. I don't want to give anything away, but love makes you do that, and that's fine. And I like that. That you know, then there was a different conversation she had with her mom, and so I enjoyed that. I thought it was a really nice find. This is a definitely. What do we see this out of? Is this on Hulu? I can't remember what streaming services was
It's
on.
on several different ones, yeah.
Oh,
I don't have Hulu, so yeah. But
I was really happy to see this small budget, you know, this little indie film being on a major stream. I really enjoyed it.
yeah, I think you obviously liked a lot more than me. I just felt I couldn't get into it. And you know, it is romantic and I enjoyed the romance aspect, but, you know, comparing it to Beale Street, which of course is a masterpiece, you know, I kept thinking about, I mean, for one thing, the romance in that film was, I just felt it in the look of it, and the music was way better. The music was not very good in this movie, including the music they were making, which he's supposed to be a musician and composition major. That was not very good.
Small indie film, and we're talking about comparing it to a masterpiece of the last couple of years
Yeah,
or
but
so.
Beale
That's not
Street didn't
fair.
have a huge budget either. But then the side characters, like none of their friends or her mother were very interesting. And again, I like to see a romance with where the other people are, you know, they give them a little something to do.
Oh, I didn't mind. I like the other characters. I like some of the conversations they had. I love that, especially when they were in the diner and he comes in and he was very upset because of something that just recently had happened, which is very compelling to today's world. And they had this huge conversation and ends up becoming a big fight, and he walks out. And I
Mhm.
really enjoyed that. I found him very charming, and I thought she was fascinating. And I love the fact that she was so that was the hard part about it, was that her being so incredibly smart that when she did something that wasn't as smart, it was like, oh, dang it, really? Because I just had higher expectations for it, which means I had bought into the film. So that's a good thing.
Okay.
It's worth
So
finding.
you're giving it 3.5?
I'll give it 3 stars. Yeah.
3 stars. Oh, okay. Okay, so we'll move on to our next film, which is the Oscar-nominated film, or foreign language ones. This one is called Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion. It's quite the mouthful, from 1970. And this is about a police detective who commits a crime and deliberately leaves really obvious clues all around the crime scene to see if he will be caught. This movie is billed as a black comedy, and I don't know if I would say it's funny, haha. It's like funny, uncomfortable. It's fascinating. It's definitely very relevant to today. He is looking at, he wants to challenge the system he's in, and he wants to see if he makes it as obvious as possible that he committed a pretty heinous crime, by the way. Like, will anybody even question him? And even though, and you see every step along the way as the different police are investigating the crime, they're finding things that link it to him, and they're like, huh, that's funny, Captain, you know, we found your same kind of fabric of your tie right on under the victim's fingernails and things like that, and nobody thinks about it. And it's this whole idea, which of course was really big in Italy still at that time, 1970. This is around the time, you know, Bertolucci made The Conformist, you know, this whole idea of how did they get into this situation that they got into in World War II on being on the wrong side of history. They were definitely exploring these issues as a culture and as a country of wanting to see, you know, how did we get in this situation of just following this tyrannical, you know, leader. So we can definitely see, you know, these relevant streams to our society today in terms of, you know, authority figures and people, you know, following that or not following that. But it was just really interesting. I know, and Ennio Morricone did the score, which I don't think you liked so much. I think I liked it better than you did, the Boing score.
No, this one just felt like it was, and you know, saying this as a comedy was really hard to grasp as a comedy because of so many of the things that were happening were frustrating, like my dog barking at Bibi that he's taping. So there's a squirrel in the front yard, or God, somebody walked by. So yeah, you know, it's hard to find it really funny when he's purposely setting things up to point towards himself, and the police department isn't smart enough to pick it out. And I felt like if it did more like Inspector Clouseau type of humor, really broad, I would have an easier time finding it funny. Because in today's climate, that wasn't as funny, even with the goofy, very goofy score that was happening in the film. But I would think that he would be frustrated by it instead of, I mean, like literally, like frustrated that people, it's clearly, obviously me. It's pointing right at me. This horrible, heinous crime has been committed, and
Hmm.
above he's above all of this, even when they
He's
have.
above the law. He's above the law, and he points it out repeatedly. I think he's viewing it as an experiment. He's obviously a sociopath, and so he's viewing it in this very detached manner, almost.
So comedy about a sociopath. I mean,
Yeah,
I had
hilarious. But
nothing.
I actually can recommend it because I was fascinated because I really had no idea where it was going. I was like, this movie could just go bonkers, and it sort of does at the very end, and I had no idea. And that ending, the two endings, which ending's real, I don't know, but kind of threw me for a loop. So I can recommend it.
Oh yeah, no, I can recommend it, but yeah, I think that even though no, I knew going into it was a comedy, it was still kind of, it's when it's a foreign film, it's a different pacing, it's a different rhythm. It's a little different, and especially with something like this, it's very challenging for sure. But I don't know this director. I don't know of any of his other films. I'm not familiar with them at
Yeah,
all.
I'll have to look him up later. It'll be interesting.
I
Okay.
didn't see any. Okay, so our next movie is his distinguished classics. I think this week I win. It's Ivan's Childhood from 1962, directed by, I don't know, some guy named Andrei Tarkovsky. He's pretty good. If you watched the show before, it's like there's a bike race outside or something. And my dog is, dog? We're talking about Tarkovsky. Hush. So the maker of Stalker, Solaris, Andrei Rublev, The Sacrifice, The Mirror, I mean, amazing, amazing films. This is his first film. It's about during World War II, it's a 12-year-old Soviet orphan who's on the other side of the lines in terms of Germany, and strikes as a scout, I should say, for the Russian army, and strikes a friendship with three sympathetic Soviet officers. The first thing I would say about this film is it's just beautiful. I mean, Tarkovsky's films are just so incredibly looking. There's a forest of, I think it's birch trees, the white.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I mean, you just
They
want to,
look painted.
yeah, you want to blow it up and make it wallpaper. If it was my wallpaper in my front room, I would be so pleased and so happy. It's absolutely incredible. And even though it's a little man-handsy, there's this beautiful first kiss that happens over a trench. That's not so romantic, but it's beautifully shot, and it's
Hmm.
a different movie. It'd be so romantic. Not so much in here.
Yeah.
The young boy, Nikolai, the actor that plays Ivan, Nikolai Bolieviev. Sure, let's go with that. I did have. I'm not familiar with anything else that he made, but I really like him in this film. He does a really good job of being this boy who's just in it for revenge. He wants revenge against the German army for what they did to his life and killing his family. And
Yeah.
here, 12 years old, it's ingrained in his soul to get over there, and he wants to help as much as he can to take them down. Which is very sad and
Right. It's an amazing movie, which is sort of like goes without saying with Tarkovsky. It's not my favorite of his films, but man, for a first film, I mean,
you.
just the image of the trees, like you said, the birch trees alone. Then there's the scenes in kind of the underground bunker they're in, where you just feel the oppressiveness of the war going on outside. But then talk about a movie that knows how to take quiet moments and have these conversations where they're kind of contemplating what's happening in the outside world and their role in it. And then he kind of has these flashbacks back to his childhood, his parents, his sister, and these beautiful scenes of what his childhood was like before the war. And so the title on Ivan's Childhood is almost sort of ironic in a way because he's still a child, but it's almost like he's had to grow up so quickly. So really poignant anti-war movie.
The opening tracking shot, which is just absolutely incredible, showing him in a dream world, is just absolutely mind blowing. I mean, as we go backwards through his career, yeah, it's easy to, you can now see the traces. Yeah, for a first film, you can see where those things just started, and a genius certainly is at work, and then he just takes them and just expands them until, like, you know, in my opinion, well, I guess Stalker and Solaris, where he really knows how to do a long take and really pull you in. And someday I'll watch Solaris again. Not so much not a good first film to watch. But definitely, if you're a fan of the show, hopefully you've seen his other films. If you haven't, now's the perfect time to start. You have nothing but time, so knock these out. Get Criterion. You can pretty much see all of them. I think they're damn near all of them on.
Yeah, he didn't make that many because he died tragically fairly young, you know. So, most of them are on Criterion Channel.
If not, yeah, they're totally just, yeah. They'll soak a lot of your day, and they'll take it away.
I think this one is less than 2 hours, which might be his shortest film, maybe, possibly. I'm not sure. I can't remember if how long Mirror is, but yeah. Great film. Good pick, Brian.
Yeah, it's been a while. Okay, so you cannot recommend The Old Guard. I can.
2.5, yeah.
And we both can recommend Shirley?
Yeah, barely 3.
I can recommend Premature. You do not?
I was on the fence between 2.5 and 3. It's sort of in that ballpark. I'm not very excited about it.
Yeah, okay. And then Investigation of a Citizen Above Suspicion, which is a fascinating, please, if you watch this movie, write it in and tell us your thoughts, because if you get the humor, I really want to be a part of your world. But it's a fascinating film and totally one to see. And then, of course, Ivan's Childhood, which I think is the winner. That's the big winner of the...
Pretty obviously, yeah.
Obviously. So as always, you can check out our previous episodes and reviews on realfilmsnobs.com. You can subscribe to us on YouTube and be sure to click that little bell so you get little notifications when we put a new one up. You can follow us on Twitter. You can listen to us on KMUZ. Watch us on CC, that's not CCTV anymore.
CC Media.
Thank you. In Salem, CAM in Corvallis, and CAN in Silverton. We want to thank our amazing sponsors. Our fantastic crew, we're mostly watching from home, but our one-man or two-man crew, I should say. And then my amazing co-host. As always, I want to thank you for watching and have a great day and great movies.